Imagine waking up with the worst hangover of your life every single day for like 11 weeks and having to go into work every single one of those days. That is literally how I felt when I had morning sickness. So let's talk about it. In this video, I'm just going to be talking about my experience with morning sickness, how it affected me, and was there anything that helped me? So I was around 6 weeks pregnant when I first got nausea. And I'd actually booked in an early scan before that because I had spotted a little bit around 4 weeks when I found out. But then I also started spotting again a little bit after that. So I was quite worried about that. So yeah, I had this early scan booked in. But then before the scan came along, I experienced nausea and I actually decided to cancel the scan because I was feeling quite reassured that I was starting to feel symptoms. And I also knew that if we went to the scan and it was too early to see anything, that would cause me to spiral, just not knowing if everything was okay, which I know I didn't know anyway without the scan, but I think if I was told by someone, we can't see anything just yet, it would have made me worse. So yeah, cancelled the scan, and then things just got worse from there in regards to the sickness. It was just, honestly, I've never been through anything quite like it. And I've always been really afraid of being sick. Like, I've always said to people that I have emetophobia, but I don't think I actually do because it doesn't affect me as much as it affects others who really do have a rough time with it. It doesn't affect how I eat, and it doesn't, like, I'm not afraid of seeing other people throw up. I'm afraid of throwing up, and I think it's that lack of control in regards to my body and just the feeling of it. It's just horrible. And I think before I was pregnant, I hadn't actually vomited in close to 20 years, like properly vomited. This was just something that it was extra hard on me because of that. So before I got pregnant, obviously heard about morning sickness, of course. It's kind of a weird one because I feel like the way that morning sickness is depicted in books and films is very casual, and when I say it's normalised, I just mean I feel like it's normalised that it's just something that happens to women. It's a bit of an inconvenience, but nothing really more than that, and they're just expected to get on with their days. That wasn't my experience, and I know that there's a lot of people who have experienced a lot worse than that. Hang on, there's a name for it. I have to actually read the name off my phone because I never seem to be able to say it right. Hyperemesis gravidarum. I wasn't diagnosed with that, so I was kind of in that in-between stage of not being diagnosed with it, not being hospitalised for it, but being so sick that it was really impacting my everyday life. Now, hyperemesis is a really serious topic. It really does affect your mental health. My morning sickness came alongside really quite severe food aversions, and I almost found those harder because I felt like my life was being controlled by food. I couldn't step foot in a restaurant, I couldn't step foot in a cafe, the smell of coffee made me sick, and I would honestly just be so afraid of smelling food that would set me off. It really did impact my daily life. I even went off some of my favourite foods. It wasn't like an immediate thing. There'd be some weeks that I would be okay with the food, and then the next week it would completely turn my stomach. So roast dinners is one of my favourite dinners, and it completely sickened me. It is insane as well, like how heightened my sense of smell was. Something could have been cooked earlier on in the day and I would get home hours later and the smell would just hit me when I walked through the door and nobody else could smell it. And that would make me sick as well. I could smell the walls of it, like the houses that I was in. Crazy, like that would trigger my sickness. Where I worked, it's like a very old building. I could get a smell off that as well. Like none of these places in like any normal circumstances smell bad. Just when I was pregnant, it was a real issue for me. I felt like I didn't have that much control over my own life anymore. Not to sound dramatic, but that is honestly how it felt. I didn't know what was going to make me sick. Like obviously there were a few things that made me constantly sick, so I knew to avoid those if I could, but the next week there might have been something that came completely out of the blue and would just make me horrendously sick. So I'm just gonna go through some of the worst food aversions I had, starting with the worst, and it was so bad that I actually haven't even, like now I'm 9 months postpartum, if I'm still postpartum, I haven't even gone back to like smelling it. I'm sure I'd be okay, but it was just so bad during my pregnancy. And that is fried egg. Oh my God, it was just so bad. And where I work, when you walk through the staff entrance, you have to walk through the kitchen to get to the main building. And when I was on the early shift, there would just be fried eggs cooking for the breakfast, and a few times I had to run and get sick just because I just couldn't deal with it. I could smell it from my office. It was just really difficult. I actually had to go into work every day for 11 weeks because that is how long my sickness lasted. 11 weeks every single day. And the reason I had to go into work every day was because we were applying for a mortgage and I'd only been in the job for a couple of months. So I had to pass my probation period. So like I said at the start of the video, imagine your worst hangover, but this is even worse than that. And unlike a hangover, you're not feeling a bit more like yourself by 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon. It was so intense that someone would come in from the restaurant and I wouldn't have been anywhere near this restaurant because there are two restaurants. This one is sort of, you have to go out the building and then enter it through a different door. So they would come in from the restaurant to the office and I would smell the food that was clinging to their clothing, and that would make me sick as well. It's just the smallest thing. It was really unavoidable. So coffee, that was a really bad one. Could not stand the smell of it. Anything fried, hated it. Onions, nope. Garlic, pasta sauce, no. What else? There's so many, like, oh my God, how could I forget? This one was steak. The smell of steak cooking, terrible, just absolutely diabolical. But thankfully I'm fine with a lot of it now. I actually like the smell of coffee now, so there is an end to it. If you're going through it now, there is an end. And I know a lot of women do go through it up until they give birth, but usually like after you give birth, your symptoms immediately disappear. I had severe heartburn in the 3rd trimester, and once I gave birth, it completely disappeared. The sneaky thing about morning sickness is that if you don't eat anything, so if you have an empty stomach, it makes it even worse. But then you're so sick that it's like you can't eat things either. I was okay with sweet stuff. I never went off that, so chocolate or anything, which is great because I am a chocoholic, always have been, always will be. Anything plain, like I think they call it beige food, so like plain pasta, plain bread, that was fine for me as well. Plain crisps, chocolate, cereal, that is actually one of my massive cravings. I had that every single day during my pregnancy. For a good few weeks I really wasn't eating proper dinners because I just couldn't stomach it. So my sickness was usually the worst for me in the mornings because obviously I was waking up with an empty stomach. So what would usually happen was I would get up, I would probably scroll on my phone for a bit, which looking back, you probably shouldn't do. You probably should just get something in your stomach straight away. They do say sometimes just to keep crackers, you know, on the side of your bed, or a cereal bar just so that you can like line your stomach a bit so the sickness doesn't get too bad straight away. But I physically felt so poorly I couldn't get out of bed, and it really took everything in me every single day just to get myself out of bed. Like I said, I had no choice but to go to work. I would then have to go and throw up for I don't know how long, usually 5-10 minutes maybe, and then I'd usually get a bit of relief from that, and then I'd have a bowl of cereal. And then obviously things would get worse when I got to work because of all the smells of food, just smelling like the walls. That sounds weird even saying it now, but if you've been through it, you'll understand. There was the odd day that I wasn't sick in the morning. I think there was maybe like 1 or 2 days that I wasn't physically sick at all, but they were really rare those days. I did have certain days as well where the sickness wasn't as severe as other days. They didn't happen often either, but they did happen. I went to London when I was 12 weeks pregnant and still very sick, and that is usually when they say that you start to get better. So myself and my mum, we had a whole trip to London booked in. And we were booked in to see Moulin Rouge in the West End. I absolutely love musicals and I've always wanted to see Moulin Rouge. I couldn't wait to go. This was all booked in before I got pregnant. So I was really anxious about this trip because I didn't know how I was going to be. It's a very busy trip when you go down to London, you know, if you're doing lots of things, which we were. The day we went to see the performance, thankfully I wasn't too sick. The day after I was very bad, so we had to leave early. So yeah, some days were better than others. So I know I kind of mentioned a few foods that I was okay with. I will just go through some more now because the ones that I mentioned earlier on, I was pretty much okay with consistently throughout the pregnancy. Whereas these ones, I would be absolutely fine with it for maybe a week, and then the following week, I couldn't deal with them anymore. The first thing I found myself being able to properly eat after probably living off very little for a few weeks because I couldn't keep anything down, was pasta and sauce packets, and it's the cheese and broccoli one. If you're from the UK, you'll probably know what I'm talking about. Or Ireland, they have them here too, obviously. I was very surprised that I was able to stomach them because they are very flavourful. I think I ate it for like 4 days straight at one point. The fixation on that lasted for about 2 weeks, and then I kind of went off it. And then I went through a phase of loving baked beans because my mum came to visit me when I was 9 weeks pregnant. I think she was sort of urging me to try and eat something. So I tried baked beans and found that I actually enjoyed them, and I found them really comforting. And then one day, after having a lovely dinner of beans on toast, I threw it all back up again and I couldn't go near them again. I did have quite a bit of guilt attached to my eating habits while I was sick. Basically, I was just in survival mode. I was just eating anything that I could stomach, and sometimes it wasn't the healthiest of things, and I felt really guilty because of all the things that you read and you hear when you get pregnant to have a healthy diet. I was even told that by the midwife in my first appointment, and I just couldn't do it. I was only eating what I could eat. But I do remember when I had my first hospital scan, I was sort of bringing this up with the sonographer, and she did, to be fair, say, look, just eat whatever you can. The most important thing is to eat. That is my advice to anyone who perhaps only has certain things like they can stomach, and maybe you're worried it's not healthy enough. Don't worry, just survival mode. You've got to do what you've got to do. It was definitely a rough time. Sometimes it would be a very slow building nausea, other times it would just, I'd smell something, it would hit me, I'd have to run to the toilet. No day was ever really fully the same. I never knew what to expect day by day. So it was a very unpredictable 11 weeks. Like I said, it did improve by around 17 weeks. Unfortunately, my memory card is full, so I have to continue on my phone. Sorry about the quality. I didn't find that there were many things that helped me. I know people recommend ginger biscuits, tried them, didn't work. Beige foods did help, so I could eat bread, I could eat obviously cereal, plain pasta, that sort of stuff. I tried the sickness bands, and I feel like at the very beginning it sometimes possibly helped a little bit, but I don't know if that was a placebo because I kind of ditched them after a couple of weeks. And yeah, I actually, to be fair, looking back, I don't think they really did make much of a difference. But just because things didn't work for me doesn't mean it won't work for anyone else. This is, everyone is so different. I found it very difficult at work. Like I said, obviously fried eggs in the morning. We would have staff dinners, which are delicious where I work. They're full of flavour, but obviously I couldn't deal with flavour when I was pregnant. I would spend every day in my car for lunch. I actually had spent quite a lot of money on things like Costa sandwiches, plain chicken salad sandwiches, just because I just couldn't stomach anything else. I feel like when you're going through it, you just feel like it's not going to get better. And that is how it felt. It is very difficult to go through. And I think, like I said, I think morning sickness can be spoken about really lightly. Sorry about the shaky camera, by the way. But it is really, like, if you're actually going through it and it's quite bad, there's really nothing light about it. Like I said, I wasn't diagnosed with hyperemesis. If you are, they put you on a drip in the hospital because a lot of the time you can't keep anything down, so you're getting dehydrated. And I actually remember during my first midwife appointment bringing it up. She was a lovely midwife, but I brought it up and I said, look, is there anything that I can have that will help me, because I had heard of people going on medication for this. The answer that I got was, it's just one of those things, that some women go through, unfortunately. And I was thinking, I know that, but surely we are in 2020, it was 2024 at the time. We are in 2024. Are you actually telling me that there is nothing that can even alleviate my symptoms slightly? I missed out on a lot of social events. I missed out on my Christmas party. I just couldn't fathom going where there was food. It was really tough. Like I said, it really peaked at 13 weeks, and then it started to slowly get better. And I just, I would wake up one morning and realise that I hadn't thrown up for a day, for 2 days, for 3 days. And I think I had probably about 2 weeks of a lot of comfort and feeling just like a new person before the heartburn kicked in. However, the heartburn was not half as bad as the morning sickness was. I will also say that giving birth is a huge thing, but I will 100% take giving birth 1,000 times over having morning sickness again. So yeah, that was my experience. I will say that I really do sympathise with anyone who's going through it. It's really horrible. I know it's kind of made light of in a lot of films, and you know, a lot of women in these films throw up into a bin at work and then they just get on with their day-to-day lives. Don't know how they're doing that. Probably because it's fiction. But yeah, just do anything that helps you. So eat plain foods, that helped me. Try the sickness bands. Sign off work sick if you're really not well. You shouldn't have to endure that. It was honestly very torturous for me, having to get myself up every day. But I think probably the most important thing is to advocate for yourself. So, you know, if you do feel like it's becoming unmanageable and you need medication, just push for it. Don't let anyone tell you that what you're feeling is normal, because even though millions of women experience it, and yes, perhaps it's normal, doesn't mean you have to suffer. So do advocate for yourself. Just know that there is an end in sight as well. It may be a month away, it may be 4 months down the line, or it may be after you give birth, but honestly it does get better. I can personally say that I love all the foods that I went off, apart from obviously fried egg, but I've never liked that, to be fair. Just hang in there, because honestly it is all worth it when you're holding your baby. Please do drop a comment below. I'd love to hear other people's experiences. Be sure to like this video if it's something that you were interested in or if it resonated with you. And if you are interested in my content, I would love it if you would subscribe, and hopefully see you in the next video.